Inna alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. We're continuing with the topic of patience. Patience, which we have determined yesterday, is a component of Islam. As we have determined yesterday, patience is a characteristic that every one of us need to possess in order to be a true Muslim. Without patience, you are not one who believes in Allah. Without patience, you are a person who has not earned Allah's love. Without patience, there is no way you will make it to paradise. As we already discussed, a lot of Muslims don't understand the meaning of patience. Patience means to maintain dignity in good times and in bad times without transgressing the limits of Allah or transgressing against yourself and others. Patience is what allows us to be able to accept what Allah deals us. Patience is what causes us to be able to move forward in life and do what's required of us as humans and Muslims. So thus, patience is what makes you up. Patience determines if you are a righteous person or not. And that's the whole reason of us doing this series. And now that we understand what it means to have patience, and we also discussed how patience is a gift. For those of us who do possess this characteristics, we're able to handle the challenges that life deals us head on without panicking, without complaining. We're able to deal with whatever life sends our way with dignity, again, without transgressing the limits of Allah or transgressing against ourselves and others. The patient person is the one that can overcome being laid off from work, can overcome the death of a loved one, can overcome being tested and tried with his money, his property. So again, to have or possess patience, it is truly a gift. And now today we're going to speak about the different perspectives on patience. And there's something that we have to also understand. There's two different types of patience. There's physical patience and there's psychological patience. And either you can choose to maintain physical or psychological patience, or you can choose to not. You may be put in a situation where you have no choice but to remain patient physically. You may be placed in a situation where you have no choice but to adhere to psychological patience. And this is what we're going to speak about today. Now, say you have a job. Your job is you are a concrete layer or you are a window washer. And to be a window washer, this requires you having to wash windows that are on buildings that are 25 feet high in the sky. It takes patience to perform those type of duties, those type of jobs. Okay? Physical patience with choice. You can choose to take the job and you can choose to perform your duties, or you can choose not to. Then physical patience without choice. Say, for example, there's a blizzard. It's snowing really hard in your area. You have no choice but to endure it. Say it's 105 degrees outside. You have no choice but to endure it. The lights, the electricity has went off in your city. You have no choice but to endure it. Those are examples of physical patience that you have to implement because you have no choice but to. Does everybody understand? So this is the difference between physical patience, choosing to have patience physically, and having no choice but to implement it. The same exists with psychological patience. For example, choosing You can choose to not fornicate. Say, for example, you live in an environment, everybody around you has girlfriends or boyfriends, everybody's going out on dates. You can choose to give in to that temptation, or you can choose to implement psychological patience and ignore it. Okay, so that's a great example of psychological patience by choice. You know, you choose to not allow what's going on around you to affect you to the point where you transgress the limits of a law. That's psychological patience by choice. Then then we have psychological patience without choice. For example, say for example, your husband decides that he doesn't want to be married to you anymore and he issues a divorce against you. You have no choice but to endure that breakup. Or say, for example, one of your loved ones dies. You have no choice but to psychologically accept that and move on. So again, you know, these are examples of implementing physical patience and psychological patience either by choice or without it. And I hope this is clear to everyone. If it is not, after the lecture, be sure to ask me for more clarification. So since I've given you the example, you should see that patience, to implement patience by choice or to choose to be patient, this is of a higher status than being patient without choice. Because again, whenever we make the choice to obey a law, whenever we make the choice to do something good, whenever we make the choice to stay away from something bad, this puts you of a better status with a law than having no choice but to do it. And an example of that can be found in the story of Prophet Youssef. Okay? Prophet Youssef, alayhi salam, the wife of the Admir, was in love with him. She tried to seduce him. He could have given in to his desires and went on and lay with her, but no, he chose to implement patience and reject her, knowing that she would go and slander his character. This is what made him of a high status in the sight of Allah. When this leader's wife came to seduce him, he called upon Allah and asked Allah to help him to resist her, and he resisted her. He could have given in to his desires, but he didn't. This superior voluntary patience, this is the type of patience that all the prophets of Allah had. Noah, Moses, Jesus, Abraham, and our prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's what makes the prophets the best of mankind, because they chose to implement or apply patience. How many of us do? Okay. So again, to implement patience by choice, to choose to be patient and obey Allah, to choose to do the right thing, puts you of a higher status in the sight of Allah than having no choice but to do it. And that's just common sense. And so I want you to remember those things about to implement physical or psychological patience by choice or without choice. I have no choice but to accept the fact that it's raining outside and I have to drive to work in that rain. So I'm going to drive patiently. But if it's a clear day outside, I could choose to speed, to break every speed record and get to work, you know, and violate the laws and all that. Possibly expose someone to an accident, you know. So again, I'm choosing to abide by the laws. I'm choosing to take my time and get to work. I'm choosing to not give in to how fast my car is. You know, that makes you a better person than a person who had no choice but to adhere. So again, I hope that's clear. So now that brings us to a question that many people ask. What about animals? Do animals have patience? We have to understand, guys, animals and humans are not the same. Allah gave us something that he didn't give to any of his other creations, not the animals, not the angels, not the sun or the moon or the stars. And that thing is called free will. Animals, they share only the two types of patience in which there is no choice. Since they have no free will, animals can't choose. They can't implement their own choices. They live and survive by instinct. 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 So they are forced to implement patience due to their environment and all of that. They don't choose it. So animals differ from us. If it's raining outside, they have no choice but to do what their natural instinct tells them to do, to go find shelter. Okay? And that brings us to the next question. What about the jinn? Do the jinn have patience? Now, remember, jinn are another creation of Allah. Jinn are also held accountable like we are. The jinn share many similarities with the angels, and they share many similarities with us humans. The one similarity that they do share with us is free will. Jinns have a choice like we do. Allah did not only give us humans the gift of free will, but he gave it to the jinn too. This is why the jinn will be held accountable for their choices in life, just like we will be. But Allah doesn't hold animals accountable. Allah does not hold the sun or the moon accountable. Allah does not hold the angels accountable because they don't have this gift known as free will. So the jinn, they share the quality of patience with us. And they are responsible for their actions just like we are. They have to have patience to fulfill their obligations as we do. They have to worship Allah and believe in him alone just like we do. Okay? But as far as the physical matters, such as taking a bath, making wudu, they are not the same as us. Remember, guys, the jinn have different fiqh regulations than we have. Okay, they have this tool known as free will, this gift of free will. So they're held accountable for their choices in life. But remember, they don't live their lives the way we do. They have different fiqh regulations. They have different regulations of understanding than us. They eat, for example, with their left hand. We have to use our right. Okay? They don't relieve themselves the way we do. So they're different in that way. But are they obligated to implement patience when it comes to their choices and all of that like we have to do? Yes, they are. And that brings us to the question of the angels. We've already answered this. The angels do not have free will. The angels were created with only one purpose in life, and that is to do whatever Allah commands them to do. They don't have the ability to choose for themselves. They're like the robots of Allah. So since they are like robots, they don't need patience because they never are faced with the thought to do anything other than what Allah says. So don't be deceived by these supernatural shows you watch on television about fallen angels. There's no such thing as a fallen angel. That's all myth and supernatural crap. Angels were created to do whatever Allah commands them to do. They never disobey him. They're not capable of disobeying him. They're not capable of making bad choices for themselves. They don't even think for themselves. Okay, so they have no need of patience. okay, at all. Just as we share some things with the jinn, we also share some qualities with the angels, okay? But we are not angels, just like we are not jinn. So don't be deceived by these fantasy shows on television or any of that either. Okay? So again, guys, this is what, and by the way, this is what sets us above the rest of Allah's creation. The simple fact that we do have the ability to choose to implement patience in our everyday existence. This is what sets us above the rest of Allah's creation. This is what makes us even better than the angels. Okay, Allah commands us to implement patience in life. Allah commands us to implement patience in all things. Allah tells us, that those of us who do implement this patience are the ones who have earned his love, who earn his forgiveness, and who will earn a spot in paradise. And this is why, to those people who live their lives doing this, at the time of death, the angels will come to you when you are dying, and they will say, do not be afraid. Understand that you will receive the good news of the garden of bliss to that which you were promised because of how you lived your life, implementing patience into it. So again, guys, this is all the more reason why it is important for us as Muslims to better ourselves by trying to condition ourselves to be more patient. And we talked yesterday and the day before about how to develop patience. Pretend that you have it. Make dua, asking Allah to give it to you. Surround yourself with people who do have it. These are all ways to develop this needed attribute. You do not want to live your life a person who gives in to your desires, pushing your religious motives to the side. This is a person who does not have patience. Like I gave in the first example, everyone around you has a girlfriend, everybody around you is dating, it's part of the norm, people live together, people have boyfriends, the women don't wear hijab, so I'm not going to wear one either. It takes patience to say, well, despite what everyone else around me is doing, I choose to obey Allah and stay away from these things as Allah has commanded. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said the helpless person is a person who follows his desires and his wants and indulges in sin instead of implementing patience and resisting that around him. Again, the meaning of patience, this is a person who carries himself with dignity in good times and bad, without transgressing the laws and rules of Allah. If you're going around with girlfriends and boyfriends and dating and smoking and drinking, giving in to the peer pressure around you, you are a person who does not have patience. Okay? And again, guys, we're not perfect. We're not angels. Sometimes you might find yourself faced with situations that are tempting, and you end up falling in or giving into that temptation. You don't implement patience and restrain. Instead, you give in to your desires. Well, again, that's part of being human. We're not perfect. Remember, Allah created us to make mistakes because Allah likes for us to recognize that we made a mistake and turn back and seek his forgiveness. So sometimes, even though you are a patient person and you're trying to live your life being as patient as you can, you may end up lacking patience and falling into your desires. Well, when this happens, this is part of being human. The key is, will you recognize your mistake and turn back? And that's what we saw in the series on the differences of the companions. They were the best amongst us. But sometimes they gave into their desires. Muawiyah gave into his anger. And his anger got the better of him. But right before he died, look at how Muawiyah repented. He recognized the error of his ways and repented. So again, you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to always implement patience. Sometimes you're going to give in to your desires and fall victim to the lack of it. But the key is, are you quick to turn back to it? And again, all of us are different. Some of us are stronger than others. Some people cannot have patience without struggling it and without enduring many difficulties, where others have it easily. For example, a man who wrestles with a strong man and can't beat him. Okay? You're trying your best to implement physical patience and beat this person, but this person's just stronger than you. Or a man who wrestles with a weak man and beats him easily. Okay? This is the war between the soldiers of Allah and the soldiers of Shaitaan. And this is how our life is. We spend every day of our life faced with challenges, faced with trials, faced with hardship. Sometimes we'll come out a winner. Sometimes we'll end up falling into our desires and lose. It's an up and down battle. This is the part of being human. This is what we were created to do, to go up and down, up and down, up and down. When we defeat the soldiers of Allah, we move up higher and closer with Allah. But when we fall victim to our desires, we end up going down a notch. And this is what Ibn Mas'ud meant when he said, a man wrestled with one of the jinn and he beat him. And he asked the jinn, why are you so weak and why are you so small when you're a jinn? The jinn said, I am very big and I am very strong compared to the other jinn. But the man that this jinn was wrestling with was Umar. Umar was so strong in his faith that he was able to overcome that jinn. But how many of us are strong as Umar is? So again, we're all different. Some of us are stronger than others physically. Some of us are stronger than others psychologically. So thus, some of us have stronger patience than others. But you shouldn't be discouraged. You should always attempt to better yourself. Recognize what your weaknesses are in life. Recognize what your weaknesses are and try to overcome them and maintain patience in dealing with them. Okay? And again, guys, not only does it take patience to avoid disobeying Allah, but it also takes patience to do good deeds too. For example, it takes patience to worship Allah. It takes patience to get up every day and make those 5 salats. It takes patience to get up and make wudu. It takes patience to fast. It takes patience to be polite to people when people are racist towards you, or people hate you. It takes patience to deal with your husband and his bad qualities, or your wife and her bad qualities. So again, patience is not only required, to resist disobeying Allah, but we need patience, in following Allah's commands and in worshiping Him too. Remember, prayer is an obligation upon all of us as Muslims. But look how many people pray to the point of fanaticism. You overdo it. There's a group of Muslims out there, many of them, they call themselves Sufi. They spend all their day and night in prayer. And what does Allah hate just as much as He hates negligence? He hates fanaticism. These people don't spend much time with their families, their loved ones. They're busy praying all the time. So again, it takes patience to fulfill your obligations to Allah without transgressing the limits. And also, to fulfill the obligations to Allah, you have to make sure that you're doing it the way the Prophet taught us. Look how many Muslims innovate when it comes to prayer. There's a group of Muslims that twirl around in circles talking about this is bringing them closer to Allah. Is this something that we should be doing? No, it is not. That is not the way we were taught to worship Allah. So it requires patience to fulfill whatever the obligation is you're fulfilling the way Allah legislated. So again, guys, you see again how important it is to have patience. This is something that we all need to work on. We have to, and another thing that some of the scholars suggest that we do is, again, never forget that Allah sees everything we do. Allah hears everything. We should have a certain type of shyness before Allah. If you focus on the reality that Allah is watching and hearing everything that we say and do, this will help you to maintain your patience in regards to worshiping Him without going past the limits of fanaticism. So that's something that we need to keep in mind too. But again, the greatest challenge for us is implementing patience in difficult times. Something bad happens, you receive bad news. Someone has died, you've lost your job, or you just heard that you won't get your W-2, your money from your income tax. A lot of people freak out, go crazy. But we shouldn't do that. The first thing we should do when we hear that something bad has happened, think of the good reward that lies ahead of you if you maintain patience, if you don't panic, if you don't freak out, if you don't transgress the limits. And then you should expect and hope for Allah to get you through whatever this situation is. And then think of the blessings Allah will bestow upon you because you didn't panic, you didn't complain, you didn't act crazy. And then think of how you overcame even more worse situations than this. And this is something I was explaining to a person yesterday, a person who was freaking out about their income tax. Oh, what if, the government shut down? What if we don't get our money from our income tax? I need that money to pay for, first of all, to pay off my last Ramadan. Ramadan's coming up. I use my income tax to pay off for the days I couldn't fast, to pay the ransom. What am I going to do? Think about how Allah got you through worse situations than this. Think about how Allah is going to reward you immensely because you didn't freak out. You didn't go crazy with all this what if, what if, what if. Think about how Allah has gotten you through other situations in the past. You've made it all your life. You've been sick with an incurable disease for the past 5 years. You've been paying your ransom for 5 years. You managed some type of way for 5 years, and you haven't been working that long. How did you get past the first 2-3 years with that ransom? So this is how we talk ourselves out of transgressing the limits, by not using patience when something bad happens or we hear bad news. So again, this is a lot for us to think about. The two different types of patience: physical patience, psychological patience. Either you implement it by choice or because you have no choice but to. When something bad happens, when you hear bad news, you have a choice. You can either choose to go crazy and act a fool and cuss and scream and holler, or you can choose to remain firm and calm and trust in Allah to get you through it. And again, this is what sets us above the animals. This is what sets us above the angels. The jinn, they're like us. They have to make right choices too. We're going to stop right here for today. I want you guys to think about what we've discussed. Tomorrow I'm going to give you a quiz on this, and then we're going to speak a little bit more about patience and how to implement it in our lives. And again, the whole purpose of this series is to give you the tools you need to be able to handle whatever obstacles, whatever challenges are in your life. The same way these companions did, the way Ali did, the way Aish did, the way Talha, Zubair did, the way Muawiyah did, the way Abu Musa Sharî, Ibn Abbas. We learn from them because they were faced with every trial that we can imagine, from death to war to betrayal, slander, but they implemented patience. And as a result, they overcame these things. And as a result, they have received the good news of tidings, most of them, the good news of paradise, most of them. And most of them are already in the form of green birds flying around the throne of Allah because of their patience and hardships. So we'll stop right here for today. Tomorrow we'll pick up with a quiz and continue. If you guys have any questions, please take this time to ask. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika.